What's going on, Juneteenth family?
I have to take the lead because if I don't now, when will I do it?
These are all grassroots mixes from since 90.
And risks are important. Risk creates results.
Make sure that you surround yourself with not only the word, but with positivity.
Foremost, for having me on for Lunch and Learn.
We start off by wearing all of the hats. Pun intended right there with the hats.
But we start
special needs children and civilians.
I have over 30 years plus experience as a quality professional.
We basically reconstructing what we took part in deconstruct. All the street maintenance. That's how we came up with street maintenance.
I almost had to deal with MCA Records at the age of 19.
Wait a minute. I also partner with other daycares. We're not in a competition yet. We're not in a competition.
What's going on, Juneteenth family? Another edition of the Lunch and Learn. I am your host, Kiara, aka Ambi. I am happy to be here with you. As always, we have some special guests in the house. And today, not just one guest, we're blessed with a group of individuals that will sit and talk with us about something that is amazing. Who am I talking about? The Alliance of Family for Justice. We have some members that's joining us today. We are honored to have these three distinguished speakers who have dedicated their lives to advocacy for justice, reform, and empowerment. Who am I talking about? Tyrrell Muhammad. He is a senior advocacy coordinator for AFJ. And despite serving a 20-year sentence in state prison, he has earned his GED, a Bachelor's of Arts from Syracuse University, and a Master's of Arts from New York Theological Seminary. So that's dope within itself right there. Next, we have Eddie Rosario. He is the campaign coordinator for AFJ's Shut Down Attica campaign. We are going to talk about that today. Eddie has over 20 years of experience working to dismantle the United States punishment paradigm. He directed the community-based reentry project, Developing Justice, and worked with the Correctional Association Prison Visiting Project. Okay, currently Eddie is a freelance consultant on criminal justice reform and prison abolition. Lastly, we have Lumumba Bandele, who is the director of Organizing and Advocacy at AFJ. Lumumba has served as the National Strategies and Partnership Director at the Movement for Black Lives and the Director of Community Organizing at the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. He's co-founded the Black August Hip Hop Project, dope, and was instrumental in campaigns to encounter police abuse and misconduct, leading to significant changes in police oversight in New York City. Please help me welcome these three brothers to the stage today to join us for this session. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Such amazingness that I see that we're about to get into. I'm gonna open the floor up and give you all just a brief session to tell us a little bit more about yourselves individually and your role within the company.
Sure. Eddie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Currently, as was mentioned before, I'm campaign director for the Shutdown Attica movement. I'm also doing some work with the Alliance of Families for Justice in terms of getting the vote for people who are currently incarcerated in New York State prisons. I've been doing this work for a very long time. I could go on and on, but I won't. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Tyrrell Muhammad, senior advocate. I've been in this field of work in truth since 1979, when I first was incarcerated and got politicized. And I continue to do this work upon my release because it's my life mission, you know, to reveal some of the atrocities and the ongoing evolving of slavery to the rest of the world that tends to forget about it. So that's who I am.
We thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just honored to have the privilege of working with these two gentlemen. Lumumba Bandele, I'm the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at AFJ, and longtime organizer, adjunct professor at the City University of New York, a member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, number of other things. But at this moment, part of the team to do, and what I like to say is fulfill the mandate of finally and permanently closing the notorious Attica State Prison.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump right into that. Could you tell us about the Shutdown Attica campaign and what you hope to achieve with this initiative, and just the background of that? And if somebody's watching who's never heard of it, what is that?
As they say, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Yes.
A little clip we'd like to share, and then because part of what we realize also, we make a big assumption in thinking that everybody remembers the massacre from 1971, that everybody remembers the uprising that preceded that, and that's wrong. Many people, because it was 50-something years ago, don't know it. Younger people don't know it. Older people have forgotten about it. Yeah. So it's a big assumption to think that people know. And so I want to just, if I can, show just a very quick clip.
Please, yes.
And then take it from there. All right.
And we do not intend to be beaten or driven as such.
Film, as you can see, shows Attica State Prison from the air, from the helicopter.
People still debate what really happened inside the walls of the Attica Correctional Facility, the scene of the bloodiest inmate uprising in American history. When New York State troopers retook the prison on September 13, 1971, 29 inmates and 10 correctional officers died, all from bullets fired by the authorities. 3 more inmates and a guard died in the riot itself. But why was the siege so bloody?
Officials at the prison said 8 of the hostages had had their throats cut. But today, the Monroe County medical examiner, having looked at the bodies, said no throats were cut at all. The medical examiner says the hostages were apparently killed by large caliber ammunition and shotgun blasts from a distance, which immediately raised the possibility that some of the hostages may in fact have been shot down by the lawmen who broke in to rescue them.
At a time when police brutality is once again stirring furious debate, the New York Attorney General's office has renewed the mysteries of Attica. They released 46 pages of a state report, sealed for more than 4 decades after the killings. The documents air fresh allegations of savagery at the hands of law enforcement. One inmate said he heard an execution, a shot fired after an officer in an orange raincoat used a racial epithet, saying a particular inmate ain't dead yet. A National Guardsman said he saw inmates beaten with clubs and upended off stretchers. A doctor saw injuries he felt were consistent with torture and abuse, including sodomy with a broken bottle.
They were forced to strip naked. They were forced to crawl through the prison yard.
The revolt grew out of a push for more humane conditions. The jail was over capacity by at least 600 men, and the mostly black inmates felt brutalized by the guards and all-white staff. So on September 9th, after the discovery of a faulty gate, about 1,000 prisoners organized in one of the yards. Some brandished knives and makeshift weapons. Over 40 prison staff were taken hostage, and Elliot Barkley became a charismatic spokesperson, issuing more than 24 demands.
The entire prison populace, that means each and every one of us here, have set forth to change forever the ruthless brutalization and disregard for the lives of the prisoners here and throughout the United States.
Russell Oswald, the chief of the state's penal system, quickly agreed to 28 of the demands, including more toilet paper, more showers, and better wages for prison work. But the inmates also asked for amnesty for the revolt itself, a request that was politically impossible after one of the prison guards died of his injuries.
They will do nothing to any hostage or in any violent way if the status quo remains. They want to continue to talk. If they go in there, it's going to be a massacre in this prison, and it's on the heads of the authorities if it takes place.
On the fourth day, helicopters dropped tear gas canisters, and hundreds of state troopers rushed the yard. They opened fire. When the gas cleared, 43 people were dead. Among them, Elliot Barkley, shot by an unknown gunman.
Armed rebellion of the type we have faced threatens the destruction of our free society. We cannot permit that destruction to happen. It has indeed been an agonizing decision.
Today, Attica is still a byword for police brutality, but the greater legacy of Attica may be what didn't happen. In the years since, the American prison population has expanded tenfold. In many states, the conditions remain as troubling as they were 4 decades ago. Judges in California, Florida, Alabama, New York, and Mississippi have ruled recently that the local prison conditions are unconstitutional. The inmates of Attica called for dignity. Many of their successors are still calling for the same.
Wow. So much to unpack there.
So much. So let me take a step back and just introduce the organization that is holding this campaign. The Alliance of Families for Justice is a 7-year-old New York State organization that provides support and advocacy for people who are currently incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, and their families and loved ones. Since AFJ was established 7 years ago, a core part of its foundation was committing to the closure of Attica State Prison. And so with the development of a new organizing and advocacy department, us, our inaugural campaign is this Shutdown Attica campaign. And so I'm going to kick it to Eddie to talk a little bit about why the campaign exists and take it from there.
Great. Thanks for that, Lumumba. So I'll start off by quoting the often repeated phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is what is at the root of incarceration in the United States today, and specifically at Attica. Many of you might know of the notorious Stanford prison experiment. And in any case, a psychologist called Philip Zimbardo did an experiment where he recruited college students, and he randomized some students to become correctional officers and others to be prisoners. And the experiment went so awry that within days, the lead investigator, Philip Zimbardo, had to close down the study because by the 3rd or 4th day, the guards were brutalizing the students who were playing the prisoners, and the prisoners were plotting, an escape and a riot and so on and so forth. And he became so involved in the role he was playing as warden that he wasn't seeing what was happening. And he invited his then fiance, who was a social worker, and he was so proud of the work that he was doing. And he invited her to go see this experiment that he was doing. And she was horrified. She said, "You have to stop this. This is crazy." And he did stop it. He later testified before Congress. And he said during that testimonial that if we didn't change how we did prison and incarceration in the United States, that the system would explode. Shortly thereafter, Attica happened. And the rebellion at Attica was, again, demonstrative of the findings that Philip Zimbardo found in his studies. And in that you can't dehumanize people without dehumanizing yourself first. And that's what happens. So a lot of the things that were happening in Attica during 1971, when the rebellion first started are still happening today. I'm formerly incarcerated, and one of the great ironies of my life is that I ended up investigating conditions of confinement in New York State prisons, some places where I had been incarcerated at previously. In any case, we did a lot of interviews. We interviewed people who were incarcerated at Attica, family members, and we found that there was a lot of abuse still happening at Attica. And it's also one of the most dreadful places I've ever visited. I have a friend who used to work with me who had done international work in Africa, and he had visited the place where the Middle Passage, the passage of the Black Holocaust, when they would capture enslaved people and ship them off to the so-called New World. And he said that when he stood at that place, that there was like an evil that permeated that place. And he told me that he felt the same way when he was at Attica. I think every time I visited Attica, there was a cloud over it. So why Attica? Because Attica is emblematic of what's wrong with everything that's wrong with how we do incarceration.
Oh my God. I'm almost speechless, because just as we have one of the comments, Diana commented, she said, "Oh my God, that's crazy. I never heard about that. Unbelievable how folks can be so inhumane. It's a sin and a shame." And it's definitely, that's just to say the least. Like, for that to have happened, period, and for this to be an ongoing thing, we in 2024 and these conditions still exist. It's like, okay, how do we even begin to attack this? Like, how do we approach this? How do we, who are we aiming to, who's the big person that we got to talk to get this done? Like, basically, how do we stop this? I know it's not a overnight thing, and you guys are putting in tremendous work, but what do we do as a whole?
Muhammad, why don't you take? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I just want to say very quickly that a long time ago, a high-ranking Nazi officer was captured, and he was taken to Israel, and there was a big, world stage, trial of this guy who literally sent thousands of people to their death. And there's this political writer, Hannah Arendt, who saw this guy. He looked like an accountant. He had glasses. He was partially bald. He didn't look like a monster, right? Mm-hmm. And when they asked him, how could you send all those people to their deaths? And his answer really was an epiphany for her, because he said, I was just following rules. So to answer your question, in order for us to undo the punishment, what we call the punishment paradigm here in the United States, we have to look at it systematically, because what's happening at Attica and at many other prisons is it's legal. And at one time, slavery was legal, and at one time, Jim Crow was a set of, illegal. So what we have to look at is not so much at who's like, who's the Hitler in this. We have to look at the system, and then start developing a narrative that goes counter to how we, like in the United States, we want revenge. Our justice system is predicated on revenge, and we have to change that. That's the first step.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Muhammad, you want to take the question of who's responsible for closing this, and how do we
the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, she can close it with a sign of a pen. However, that's not always the case. As you can see, she says she's closing prisons in New York State now. They have to, because of the fiscal dilemma they're in. But in order to really do what we need to do to close this prison, we need people. We need people power.
Mm-hmm.
We need people power to put pressure on politicians. We need that type of activeness. Right. We need people in the northern and the western country up New York State who don't want prisons in their communities anymore, who want a new economy to become indignant and get involved.
Yeah.
But we need people from every area and diaspora of New York State to get involved. The conditions is right now are still the same. They're still the same right now in 2024. I believe last year they had several incidents of violence where they had to lock down the facility. And many of the men and women who was incarcerated before understand what lockdown means. You know, that's a total shutdown. All of your property being destroyed and discarded. Many people being beaten in front of other people that's incarcerated. You're being disrespected regardless of who you are. This is this 21st century.
Yeah.
And we still have that abuse and that behavior prevalent in these incarceration systems. People have to get upset. People have to get on the line. Everybody knows somebody that was incarcerated or is incarcerated now.
Mm-hmm.
I went to churches when I first came home in 2005, and I will ask questions. How many people know somebody that's incarcerated? And I will raise my hand first. And then you see slowly but surely, the whole congregation got their hand up. It's an open secret, but we just feel powerless to do something about it. We're not powerless. We're not. All these institutions we got, all these people we got, we just lazy. That's what it is. We're in the 21st century accepting slavery.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to say, it's fear. It's the fear that we.
Yeah, the fear factor. But we shouldn't be not in the 21st century. We should never be fearful now. Not today. Not today. When we know the truth. Not today. I can understand years ago we can be fearful, but in the 21st century, when we standing up to everything today, that's one of the things we should be standing on hard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I agree with that 1,000,000%. And when I think about just people not even knowing, you know, like we know, just like you said, we all know somebody or, you know, that's currently incarcerated, that may have been incarcerated, but not really understanding the conditions in which you know, we know like, oh, you know, of course, everybody knows jail is a bad place, but to what extent we may not have that, we don't have that common knowledge. So just watching that video and just hearing you all talk, it's like, oh my God, it's like, how is this legal? You know, how is this, you know, yes, people do bad things, and, you know, we need to have some kind of system to separate, you know, but even the people that are in, and we had a virtual summit this past Juneteenth, and I had this conversation about prison reform and things of that nature. And I said, even understanding the level of crime and how people are sentenced to these minimal things, but as if it's something drastic as murder. And like, how do we differentiate between, everybody don't have to go to jail. Some people can do.
I want to answer that. I know where you're getting at. You remember when they were criminalizing Black and Latino people over heroin and crack? Because we were the predominant people on that end of that.
Yes.
Now look at Oxycontin today. Look at fentanyl. They don't humanize those who are white that's addicted and selling that.
Yeah.
They have what you call a rehabilitation mindset.
Yeah.
They don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because they look like them. We have to stop being naive. We have to see it as it is.
Yeah.
Drugs ain't going away, but because now it's an addictive problem in the suburbs. Unfortunately, they now want to humanize it. They want to get rehabilitation now. They want to put money at this issue. Before, when it was just us, they were locking us up.
Of course.
They were criminalizing us. So we have to understand that it's not about the crime. It's about who does it and why.
Yeah. Yes.
Most of the crimes that we commit is out of poverty.
Right. And let me also add that, you know, we have to interrogate this whole concept of punitive approach to crime, quote unquote, understanding that the United States is the #1 operator in the world. You know, the same approach to, you know, things like capital punishment. The theory has proven to be faulty. The theory has proven to not be true, right? If imprisonment helped to either deter or prevent or even transform people, United States should be the safest country in the world. That does not happen, right? Capital punishment is in place because people believe in theory. The theory of it is that if you kill people who kill people, killing would stop. That is proven to be wrong time and time again, but we refuse to actually interrogate those things. And so AFJ really strongly believes that people who are convicted and sentenced to prison do not lose their humanity upon their conviction, do not lose their humanity when they walk into the prison. In fact, they don't lose their civil rights.
Right. That's right.
When they walk into prison, right? So even though you are incarcerated based on, and we need to have a conversation on laws that allow for it to happen so easily, but even if you are incarcerated, you still walk in there a full and complete human being who has access to the International Declaration of Human Rights, who has access to the state rights that are afforded to you and the civil rights that are afforded to you. But I think we have this conception that people are disposable once they go to prison. Right. And so once we begin to challenge that, I think we'll be able to begin to reimagine how we deal with our loved ones, our friends, our family who are in jail, who are coming home from jail, who may be going to jail. And I'll close with this. This idea of thinking that people who have been convicted of crime are permanently criminals, are permanently, you know, this thing. I ask you to remember the name of a man called Detroit Red, who transformed himself to Malcolm X, El Hajj Malik Shabazz, in prison. Okay, so people are not the worst that they have ever done. Right. And so I wonder if we can just talk a little bit about, you know, just some of the contemporary reasons why Attica needs to shut down, because our campaign stands on two basic pillars. One, that after 1971, Attica should have been closed, full stop.
Yes.
Period. Understanding what we just witnessed, that the New York State troopers under the direction of the Governor Rockefeller, went in and killed 43 people. Prison guards and staff included, immediately after that, blamed the men of the uprising for the killing of the staff and guards. It wasn't until the coroner's report proved that they did not do that it was actually the state troopers who killed them, that it became much of a bigger issue. But we said that after that, that should have been enough. The prison should have been closed. It was a site of an unspeakable massacre, but yet it remains open. And today, the conditions that those men were organizing around remain. And so when we talk to people who do this work, and I'm glad to see Brother Victor on this call too, when we talk to people who do this work, the question isn't a question of if another uprising is possible or probable. The question by most people is a matter of when. And so our campaign is firmly grounded in the belief that Attica is symbolic, as Eddie said, of the worst, and it needs to close. And also remind us that we've done the impossible before. People are like, oh, you can't close Attica. You can't close, you know, any of these prisons. When you think of some of the most notorious prisons in the country, people think of Alcatraz, people think of Attica, people think of a few others. Well, of the other three that people think of, Attica is the only one that's remained open.
Wow.
Alcatraz is closed, you know, some of the other ones. And so we've done the impossible before. Prisons have been closed. Kathy Hochul has committed to closing 5 prisons this year. She's announced 2 already that she will close. And we're trying to apply pressure to make sure that Attica can be added to the list.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry for joining late. I just want to weigh in. And it's good to see all my comrades on here. Really, I'm going to be really quick. And I heard Tyrrell addressing power and people and action, right? And when you mentioned the Attica situation, and I remember I got to Attica in 72 or either 73. Culture had not changed much. Actually, still a slave, oppressive mentality that happened pre-Attica and after Attica, right? And as I traverse different levels in the criminal justice reform arena, right, and visiting facilities and stuff like that, there, I notice a real issue because the mindset of the population back in the 70s of the incarcerated population is different than now today. Today, it appears that they are more acceptant of the degrading, dehumanizing conditions than people were before, pre-Attica, right? And those of us who, you know, OGs from the 70s and the 80s, and it's a whole different prison industrial complex, and it's always been about economics. And I think that one of the things that we look at as we go about our various goals and stuff and doing is the fact that people, those people that are incarcerated, like Tyrrell said, you fucking gotta get just totally mad, angry, disappointed, and all that kind of good stuff. And unfortunately, it's not enough of that. Okay, it's not enough of that. Like, you know, back then, you know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, there was no mediums when I was going to jail. All they had was max. So you went to one of the maxes. All this other medium camps and it didn't even exist, right? But now that they have these supposedly be less incarcerated systems and people in camp, the mindset of the people that are incarcerated, where the power comes from, they are not angry enough. Let me say it like that. And I detect that when I went and visited one of the Macs when we were doing the monitoring of the Hawk bill. And it's just like it ain't the same. Even the incarcerated committees that are supposed to be working for change for all, they ain't doing the work that they should be doing. And they are too accepting. So I think that, you know, part of our duties and our goals is that we gotta rile the natives up. Bottom line. It comes down empowerment, right? You know what I'm saying? Getting people motivated and sick and tired of being sick and tired, whereas they will actually do something, because without the people power, don't nothing happen. So we got a monumental job, and like you said, Brother Lumumba, it's not an impossibility. Look what we've done so far. Okay, got Comstock shut down. All right, we on a roll. Let's ride this momentum. Let's push for more. Let's push the whole envelope and be non-acceptant. Just like when we were incarcerated back in the 70s and 80s, we did not accept anything, and we pushed back in a big way. So thank you, and I'm glad to be here.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us today, Victor. And I just want to piggyback on that of what you all have been saying and what you said, Lumumba, about the people feeling like they're disposable, or, you know, the disposal, like with the pretty much like, oh, you know, once you go to jail, that's it, you're done, like you're done, you know. And that's what we've been programmed, I think, to do within the community of, like, we don't even understand that we're throwing our own brothers and our sisters away within ourselves, like within our community. Like, if we rise together, as you all been saying, and really fight for the power, just as a sidebar of an example, I've seen the neighborhood looks different now. It's gentrification, you know, we have different neighbors, and things that they don't want in the community, it's gone because somebody speaks up for that. And it's like, oh, well, we've been here forever and we ain't want that, but we don't know the power of our voice to say, okay, we're gonna all get together and do this, and we can get that removed as well. But when they come, they know the power of their voice, and they know all they have to do is get a group of 5 to come together to say they don't want that, and that's gone. That's the same thing that we have to apply with everything, but especially with prison reform, especially with fighting for our rights, especially with voting and having our voices be heard, because if we don't do it, anything can be done to us. You know, we've been accepting, and when I said fearful, I mean just like, okay, we think that this is the norm. This is what has been going on. So we think that this is the only thing that we can accept, and that's just not what it is. The impossible is possible, and it's always been, but even more so now than ever. You know, we've changed the narrative, and we have so much of an advantage now, you know. And I know that just talking about intersectionality and race and criminal justice and community organizing and really just applying that pressure, we got to do that. We have to do that. We have to do that. We have a question that's coming in from Mimi. It says, what are the biggest challenges to closing Attica, especially in the light of closing the other prisons in New York?
Again, people power. There's nothing to stop us. You know, this ideal in truth was born out of the Close Rikers campaign over like what, 12, 15 years ago, when we decided we wanted to start a campaign to close Rikers. That wasn't the discussion. We really met at that time to rally around closing Attica. And there was some disagreement because people were saying it was too far, or it was just a real rut at the time. So they took them, I consider low-hanging fruit, closing Rikers. And the people who galvanized around that seen the success. They seen their voices being heard. They seen their protests and their resistance made meetings possible with government officials where ordinary wouldn't met with them. So people know that it's a new day. We're doing it. It's just that everybody else got to get with it.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing it. We're not waiting for you. We want you with us, but we can't wait because time is of the essence.
Right. How do
they just killed a sister, a neo-Nazi just killed a sister who called for help. She called for help. And this is a regular thing that looks like in our community. We call for help and we are the victims.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me add to that. And I know you had a question, but let me just say really quickly to answer your first question. Part of the challenge is that people believe that, you know, we should be happy with the prisons that have already been closed. Like we should be okay with that, but we're not. What we're saying is that there's so many others that need to be closed, and that Attica again is symbolic of the worst part of New York State's history. There are many who, particularly elected officials and other stakeholders, who strongly believe that New York State is a just state, and they are committed to creating a more just society here in New York State. Our position is that Attica State Prison can't exist in this new imagination of what New York State is expected to be. Right? And so if people are committed to that, if we believe in this process called reparatory justice, if we believe in this process called transformation, if we believe in this process called repairing, then yes, that we have to acknowledge the worst parts of this history, repair it, and move forward. Part of that repairing is closing Attica State Prison.
So I think that one of the biggest obstacles to closing Attica and prisons in general is that there's a whole economy predicated on prisons, on caging Black and brown people, right? So even if there's like political willpower to close Attica, you'll have like the Union of Security Guards, a very powerful union in New York State that will scare the pants off politicians in upstate New York, making it much more difficult to implement effective modes of decarceration.
Yes.
So they don't care whether or not there are facts that, prisons actually make our communities not safer. They make them more dangerous because imprisonment, incarceration, it deteriorates our communities. Young men and women who should be able to, contribute to their communities are stuck upstate, like body bags, like so much meat, because that meat, and I hate to put it that way, but let's get real here. That meat means jobs for white people in upstate New York.
Yeah.
And those are the most prominent obstacles for prison for closing prisons. We've actually, in the early 90s, mid 90s, there were maybe 75,000 people who were incarcerated in New York State prisons. Now we have maybe 30 plus. And at the same time that we decarcerated, crime went down. So there is no cause and effect between, incarcerated at higher levels and public safety, right? So we have to start developing a language that it goes, that doesn't use the retribution kind of language, right? We live in a society that sees justice as retribution, getting even, right? We love cowboy movies because cowboy movies are all about, getting even, retribution. And that's the kind of justice that we have. And we have to we have to begin developing a language of love, of inclusion, of identifying that those people in those upstate cages are our sisters, our brothers, our fathers, our mothers. And once we start developing that language and implementing it in our policies, then things will change. But it's unfortunate that even within our own community, I was reading a quote, somebody mentioned Malcolm X. I was reading a quote today that I found online today, where I'm paraphrasing, where Malcolm X says, in the past, it was, the enslavers who brutalized us, who killed us, who did all these terrible things to us. But they taught us now for us to do it to ourselves. And there still is that mindset. Walk into any barbershop, whether it's a, Dominican barbershop or black barbershop, and you'll find that kind of thinking where, lock them up. I don't want Flacco in the corner, lock them up. And so we need, someone in the chat mentioned about education. Part of it is educating our own people, so we're not buying into the narrative that, that the powers that be are setting forth.
Yes.
Yes. And that was where I was going to go. I love that you said changing the language. Eddie, that's huge, because that's the start. First of all, leading with God, leading with love, leading with compassion, leading with, just understanding second chances, whatever it is. Just like you said, we're often so quick sometimes to say, like, what, I don't care. He deserved to go to jail. Just giving people, putting yourself in that position and thinking prior to speaking, in that way, changing that language is a start that we can all do. And secondly, I think is the education part. I always say all the time, we don't know what we don't know. If you're not knowledgeable about something, it's almost like, ignorance, but it's honest because you don't know. But when you're informed, then now you can do something about it. If you know about it and you're still not doing something about it, then it's like, okay, well, you're not playing a part in this at all. But if you know about it and you take that opportunity to create the change, you know, whether it's a small step as signing a petition or, you know, showing up to a meeting or spreading the word, you know, that creates community around issues that we need to push forth.
Mm-hmm. Let me, if I can, because I'm an organizer and I don't want your viewers or listeners to think that we are just venting. We actually, you know, want to mobilize people and organize people, and actually we have some tasks for you. We have some action items. There are a number of ways that people can contribute to this campaign. As an individual, if you want, we asked if you can see the chat. There's a petition link that's been posted a few times. Please, we ask you to sign and share the petition. The petition is directed straight to Governor Hochul, demanding that the prison be closed. We also ask if you're a member of an organization. We are inviting organizations to join our statewide coalition and campaign. You can contact us and we'll put that in the chat as well. And then the other thing is for people who have loved ones who either have been incarcerated, are currently incarcerated, or if you yourself have visited Attica and had some horrible experiences, we're currently soliciting stories now. We want to be able to document those experiences. Like you said, you know what you know. Oftentimes people's experiences don't go past themselves. And what we want to be able to do is document these things to be able to show that these conditions not only are not exclusive to just the people who are incarcerated, but to our loved ones who visit, but to even, in fact, some of the staff who have to go in and out of the facility. But we want to be able to say that this particular facility is a parasite, is something that needs to be closed, and it negatively impacts everyone.
Right.
We strongly believe that the county of Wyoming, which is the county that Attica sits in, deserves a much better center of economic driven institutions. It should not be centered around Attica. Right. And so we're asking people to submit their stories to us. And if you're interested in hosting a screening and a talk back, we can do that too. So there's very specific things that people can do to participate in the campaign. But the most easiest thing is to sign and share the petition. Let other people know that this campaign exists. If you want us to come talk to your church, your mosque, your temple, we're down to do that. So we'll leave our contact information in the chat, but we ask that you please do something more than give us a head nod, a word up. We actually need people's hands in this work that is going to take the collective to make this happen. And there are very specific things that people can do, and we invite you to join us.
Yes, definitely. If you are on this call or you watch this back, please, once again, the link is in the chat, it's in the comments. So click that link, share that link, post it on your social media, tag some people. Let's get this thing going. I want to pose this question before we run out of time. With this change, right? Once Attica is shut down, because we're speaking this into existence. Once Attica is shut down, how does AFJ envision or what would be a futuristic like prison reform or criminal justice? Like what does that look like in the future once we continue to achieve these, you know, places that need to be shut down, like Attica and whatever other jails? How does prison look in the future?
Good. I think a bunch of us can give different answers. Let me start off by saying that I think it will be essential to actually have the immediate community be a part of this, because I don't want everyone to believe that everyone in Wyoming County, in Attica municipality, supports the existence of Attica. We know for certain that's not the case. We are in conversation with a number of residents in those communities who want to see it gone. And so there are people who actually want to imagine a different reality. They want their town to be known for something other than this prison, right? If we look around the world, people have done things like take sites of trauma and made them museums so that we don't forget in terms of what has happened there. But people have also transformed these things into shopping malls, into stadiums, into other economic driven facilities, community colleges. There's so many different things, but I think there's a process that we want community members, particularly people who live in those areas, to be a part of. And so this organizing is going to happen in stages, and we want to make sure that we can include those voices from the people who live in those immediate areas. But the possibilities are endless in terms of what can happen in replace of this site of trauma.
I mean, there's an interesting, I was reading about a tribe that had an interesting approach to people who go off kilter. They'll take that person and put him in the middle of a circle and surround him. And then they'll remind that person of all the good that they have inside of them. And I say that to say that instead of like putting people in cages and treating them like animals, we have to remind people of their humanity, because sometimes we lose our way. But we need the community that the people come from to be engaged in how that person is let back into the community. And how I envision that is that we don't need prisons. For the most part, we do not need prisons. I'm an abolitionist at heart. That doesn't mean my organization is. I'm speaking for myself, but I don't believe that prisons work. I believe they make things worse, and that building a better prison is a good idea. No, excuse my language. Fuck that. Mm-hmm. You know, there's an interesting film, the girl with the go kick the hornet's nest or something like that, where the guy visits somebody in the prison. And I'm watching the film and I'm thinking he's in a hotel. And the guy who's doing the time, he has a key to the door, and it's the weekend. And he's telling his counselor, right, his therapist, not the prison guard, his counselor said, "Hey, I'm going to go home and visit my family. I see you Monday." And I'm going like, where's the prison?
Right.
I didn't know. So, you know, we need, again, by changing the language that we use to describe justice in our society, we change how it's done. And, you know, I think it was Cornel West who said that politics is love in the public eye or something like that. Well, I mean, we need to bring that. We need to bring that forward. And I'll end with this. Whenever I talk to people in my community and I challenge their premonitions, you know, their prejudices, they go, really? And once they start seeing the reality of what incarceration does, they start changing their tone. Because we all kind of, you know, we're inundated by this narrative 24/7, you know, on cable news channels, on, you know, social media platforms, you know, like, and so that we kind of like, you know.
We think we know.
Yeah, you know, we kind of go like, we sleepwalk through the day. There's so much stuff happening, you know what I mean? And it's so hard to make a living today and pay the rent that a lot of people don't have time to uncover what's the truth. And I find that when people are exposed to the truth, they change their tune very quickly.
You know, we as human beings, we restore cars, we restore homes, we restore vintage clothing. We know how to restore stuff.
Yes.
We just don't know how to restore people, or we're reluctant to restore people.
Mm-hmm.
But we restore a whole bunch of stuff. We transform a whole bunch of stuff. And people should be the first thing that should be transformed and restored, particularly if they violated the rules and the norms of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we haven't evolved there yet. Other countries and societies have a way where they do restorative justice to their community.
Yes.
As of yet, we haven't even practiced some of these models. We talk about these models, we read about them, but to implement them, that's the step we need to take. We should never have a prison in an area that the area rely on it for its economic engine.
Yeah.
That's just straight up slavery.
Yeah. Yes.
And for us in the 21st century to have this, And you say like what we do with the prisons and stuff like that. We're in the 21st century. You know, we need a Silicon Valley in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're in the 21st century. We can have a Nike plant in one of those places. We're in the 21st century.
Yes.
We can develop an app that brings tourism to upstate New York. And I don't know too many Black people to go to upstate New York for vacation.
Yeah.
Me and my colleagues travel that road up and down New York State regularly. And you wouldn't believe how beautiful New York State is.
Yeah.
But we'll never know. Because we won't even know from the inside of the prison. We should have these things in New York State. We should have water parks in New York State. We should be able to do those things in those rural areas. But we can't, because those rural areas are still in the 1950s. They still got sundown towns in upstate New York. They tell us we're not wanted in areas in the 21st century. They still got Jim Crow.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we're fighting, see? And once Attica closed, we hope that many of the other states will look at some of the worst prisons in their states and take up this same movement and campaign. Because Attica's everywhere. It's just not in New York State. Attica's everywhere.
All of you guys' responses were so powerful. This entire session was extremely powerful. I want to close with this question for our Juneteenth platform. What does Juneteenth mean to you individually or to AFJ? What does Juneteenth mean, and how does that even connect with, you know, all of everything that we've discussed today?
I'll start it off. Juneteenth and its significance, I think, is very much aligned with what we are attempting to do at AFJ, not just with the Shutdown Attica campaign, but understanding that we have been for generations, particularly as African people in this country, in pursuit of freedom. And that freedom has been elusive intentionally, and in some cases unintentionally. But part of what we are saying is that history has provided us with a mandate. Juneteenth has told us that we need to pursue our freedom relentlessly.
Yes.
Right? And the Attica massacre, as I opened up, gives us a mandate. Those men that were killed, their spirits gave us a mandate. They did not die for anything.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we close this prison. That is our mandate. As those who survive, we are in partnership with some of the survivors from the Attica brothers. We're in partnership with a filmmaker, Stanley Nelson, who did the amazing documentary, Attica, a few other authors. And these are people who are committing their resources, their skills and expertise to this campaign. And so we have a mandate to listen to our ancestors, to listen to the lessons that are still being taught from the grave, that we must do our part in this to close this prison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else want to chime in before
I concur with my colleague, but I would say this. Though the message came 2 years late, it still came.
Come on.
So I want to be, to me, Juneteenth is this for me. I got the message late. But when I got the message, I ran with the fever of freedom. Once I got the message.
Yeah. We got work to do. We have work to do. And it is our duty, you know, just like you said, it's our discipleship, it's our answer to the calling, and we wouldn't be here without those that already did the work their time. So it's lineage and it's generational, you know, generational purpose is what I like to call it, that we step up and we take on these responsibilities. And I want to thank you all for being on the front lines, for taking on, you know, this calling and for doing it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
for your audience.
Thank you so much. Please share your information where people can, again, connect, where we can sign a petition, and where we can continue.
Yeah, it's in the chat, and I think some of your team has reposted it a few times. So we posted the website, and you can get all of our information from our website. The petition is in there. Our socials are in there. Our email directly is in there. So we invite you all to please reach out to us. Join the team, y'all. Join the campaign, and let's shut this prison down.
Yes.
Thank you again so much. Anytime you gentlemen want to come back, we are here. This is an ongoing conversation. Let's not end it today, but let's continue this conversation. Let's continue to educate. Let's continue to build, to grow, and get everybody involved. Thank you for everybody that's tuned in, that's been commenting today, that's been passing along the message and sharing the link for the petition to be signed. Again, tap in. Make sure you follow us on everything at Juneteenth NY. Visit our website. And lastly, before we get out of here, let me tell you about the two things that we have coming up. We have the Back to School event, which is taking place August 24th. That will be at 1561 Bedford Avenue, and that will be from 11 to 4 p.m. Okay. In conjunction with Juneteenth, Family Bills, Major Owens, Fituation, we have Rebel Fitness Bar, we got 3/5, we got everybody that's coming together to put together this amazing event. Family fun, live music, giveaways for the kids. Please, please, please scan the QR code. And if you can, donate. A $50 donation gets 2 book bags for 2 kids. Yeah. So please, please, please help us with that. Also, talking about joining becoming a part of a board, we have our board members open with different roles. So if you would like to become a part, please, we got volunteer support, we got co-lead and community partners, co-lead for the kids zone, event production support, vendor lead, sponsorship lead, fashion show support, and safety and hygiene support. So please, if you're interested in any of those roles, or you just want to know more about it, go to our website, juneteenthny.com, and tap in with that, okay? That's our time until next time, gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It has been an amazing and powerful conversation that we will continue to grow on. We will continue.
Thank you again for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week, same time, same place. I'm Kiara, aka Ambi, your host. Tap in. See y'all next week.
Peace.
What's going on, Juneteenth family?
I have to take the lead because if I don't now, when will I do it?
These are all grassroots mixes from since the 90s.
And risks are important. Risk creates results.
Make sure that you surround yourself with not only the word, but with positivity.
Foremost for having me on for lunch and learn.
We start off by wearing all of the hats. Pun intended right there with the hats.
But we special needs children and civilians. I have over 30 years plus experience as a quality professional.
We basically reconstructing what we took part in deconstruct. All the street maintenance. That's how we came up with street maintenance.
I almost had to deal with MCA records at the age of 19.
Wait!
I also partner with other daycares. We're not in a competition yet. We're not in a competition.